I grew up in a time where people always knew that they weren't perfect and they knew they had to do something about it. This isn't limited to mental imperfections, but bodily imperfections as well. We live in an age where computers and science are king. Computers are everywhere, and innovation seems to thrive. Body augmentation is the new trend in modern society as we know it. People are modifying themselves to make them stronger, faster, and more useful than we've ever known. Mental add-ons or brain chips are the newest and more experimental of these types of upgrades. I came from a family that was abusive and cold. I found myself leaving at the age of 18 to go find a way out of the anguish I had experienced as a child. I joined the military and was shipped overseas. The situations I had to endure were intense and mentally scarring. The dreams I have are terrible. I get little to no sleep. I hate what I see every day on the streets. People seem happy with their perfect bodies and minds due to the augments. Reluctantly, I decide I need to do something about my situation. There is a doctor that specializes in the type of black market surgery I'm looking for. He's located just outside the city in an industrial building next to some train tracks. It's illegal to get an implant that isn't approved by the government. I make my way into the industrial complex and see a doorway with a small plaque with the word doctor written on it. I push the iron doors open and see a man with a coat on with a scar across his face. This was the man I was looking for. He had asked me how I was feeling rather than ask which augment I actually wanted. I told him about my trauma. He seemed unreactive and distracted, as if he were looking past me into space, as if he were in deep thought. After I was done explaining my situation, all he said was, "I know exactly what you need." He told me to lay down on a cold metal table. He put a mask on my face, then told me to count backwards from 13. I'd only made it to 9, then awoke as if no time had passed. My sight was fogged and blurry. It takes me a good 30 seconds before I can completely see. I sit up from the metal table and the doctor was gone. In a surgical pan, where he had had some equipment, lay 2 soft bloody objects. As I lean over to see exactly what they were, I hear something outside the surgery room. I get up and start to see something blinking in my left eye. It looks to be words that say, "initializing." I realize at that moment that those objects in the pan were my eyes, and that the doctor had installed my newly augmented eyes. I tried looking throughout the clinic for the doctor, but he was nowhere to be found. As soon as I stepped outside, my eyes finished loading the new program that I'd have to get used to seeing. The display showed many details about my surroundings, a lot like smartphones were when they were popular. At first, I wasn't sure why the doctor decided to change my eyes out for these ones. I thought he would just install a chip to make things easier on me. I get home fairly late and decide to head to bed. As soon as I close my eyes, I wake up. I'm in front of what seems like a theater door. This doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not dreaming. I even pinched myself to make sure I wasn't. I opened the door to see a huge seating arrangement. The screen was bright white, which was illuminating the audience. I step through the center aisle and peer into the closest row to me. I see figures, but they weren't defined. They were just shadows of people. I run out of the theater. As soon as I open the door, I assumed I'd be in the hall of the theater, but I walk into my apartment. I open the front door to see if the theater was still there behind me, but it wasn't. I figured that the whole incident was just a weird dream or a post-op hallucination of some kind. Everything pretty much normalized after that. I went to work, I ate some food, everything seemed normal, but better in a way, until I went to bed that night. I laid my head on a pillow and awoke in a white hallway. Everything was white. This hall was huge. The ceilings had to be 20 feet tall. I look around and see a man in uniform in the distance. The man was standing still, staring out into what looked like the wilderness. I walk up to him and try to get his attention. He wouldn't turn around. I shake him to see what's wrong with him. I heard a loud bang from behind me. Turn around to see a vase had fallen over. When I turn back, I can feel something wet touching my hand. I look at the man who was grabbing my hand. His uniform was bloody on the front and had dripped down to his hand from his eye sockets. He started to speak and said, "What are you staring at?" I ran as fast as I could out of the hall back into my apartment, which, like from the theater, was right outside of where I was transported. This was enough. I grabbed my pistol and decided to give the doctor a visit to see what's going on with me. I burst through the iron door. The doctor seemed unreactive when he noticed it was me. He simply asked, "What do you think?" I tell him that it was insane and why did he do this to me? As he turns around and smiles at me, my vision goes black. My vision comes back shortly after and I see the doctor with my pistol. He tells me, "Do you realize what I've done to you? I've made you see what real trauma is. Why would you care what happens in your life when you can go to sleep and see more things that horrify you than what you see in reality?" I just begged him to make it stop. He simply agreed and put me on the table. Instead of telling me to count down from 13 as he put me to sleep, he said, "You are ungrateful and undeserving." That was the last time I saw him or anything.